Welcome to HFY Vanguard, where humans outsmart galaxies, defy empires, and turn impossible odds into legendary victories. Buckle up, the story begins. The security barrier buzzed softly, flickering like a dying neon sign. Roger Lovell crouched low, his breathing slow but his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. Xantar V's grand arena loomed overhead, an angular mountain of steel plasma glass and humming energy fields. He'd been in tight spots before dockside scams on the moons of Corvus, forged manifests on the edge of the Proxima trade lanes, but nothing quite like this. He adjusted the shimmering holographic badge at his chest. It identified him as the Solar Belt Phantom, a mysterious undefeated competitor with a combat record so exaggerated even Roger thought it was a little much. A patrol of security drones glided past their scanning beams, painting the corridor in sharp lines of crimson and blue. Roger pressed himself flat against the cold alloy wall until the hum faded. His sandy hair stuck damply to his forehead. The air here smelled of ozone and machine oil. "You're at a heart rate of 132 beats per minute," came the smooth, flat voice of his companion. A small spherical droid hovered just off his right shoulder, its single red optical sensor narrowing in mock disapproval. Statistically speaking, anxiety increases your risk of error by 23.7%. Perhaps we should abandon this operation before you end up in a Xantarian correctional mine. Again. Roger flashed his signature half-smile, the one that had talked him out of debts, into bed, and through customs more times than he could count. That's not anxiety, Bink. That's excitement. 10 million credits in a seat in the Galactic Warrior Brotherhood are waiting for us on the other side of this scheme. This is the big one. The score that changes everything. He flicked open the compact holographic display on his wrist, scrolling through the tournament roster. Legendary fighters from across 17 star systems rotated in shimmering light. Crag Blood Maul, Orion champion. Grax, the telepathic twins of Alter 4. Then nestled among them like a wolf in sheep's clothing, his fabricated profile. "Have all our associates agreed to the arrangement?" Roger asked under his breath as a trio of maintenance workers walked by. A green-checked list floated from Bink's projector. "Affirmative," the droid replied, though Grax, the Orion champion, is demanding an additional 20,000 credits up front. 20, Roger ran a hand through his messy hair. "That overgrown calamari already cost us 15. We don't have that kind of—" "You'll find a way," Bink interrupted. "You always do. Just remember, if this fails, I will be forced to sell your credit history to the highest bidder. I calculate the Corellian debt collectors will pay handsomely." Roger smirked without humor. "Your loyalty is touching." "I am programmed for profit, not sentiment," Bink replied, red sensor blinking in rhythm with its words. They reached the staging area. The space hummed with the weight of legend. Warriors of every imaginable species prepared for the opening ceremony, polishing weapons, meditating, or simply flexing in ways that made entire camera crews sigh. A 7-foot Kronos warrior bench-pressed what appeared to be a small shuttle engine. A crystalline entity meditated in perfect stillness, refracting the arena lights into dancing rainbows. Roger exhaled slowly. They all looked so legitimate. "They are legitimate," Bink said without inflection. "You are not. Hence our elaborate deception." Roger tugged at the collar of his custom combat suit. It was tailored to perfection, all padded shoulders and sleek armor plates, none of which would stop a blade or a blaster, but it looked like they would. The faux scar across his left cheek caught the dim light just so. "The opening ceremony begins in 17 minutes, Bink announced. "We should proceed." Roger rolled his shoulders. Stepping into the role of the Solar Belt Phantom, a mysterious warrior from nowhere using an obscure combat style no one could question because no one had ever seen it. His first fight was supposed to be a cakewalk, a toned brute who'd have been promised enough credits to clear his gambling debts if he took a convincing dive. Easy money, easy life. For a moment, Roger allowed himself to imagine what came after. No more bouncing between outlaw ports, no more running from bounty hunters or debt collectors. No more scams to keep the lights on. Just one flawless con to set him free. "Probability of success remains at 47.3%, Bink said dryly. "When has certainty ever been fun?" Roger winked. Outside the grand arena's main spire glimmered in the light of Xantar's twin suns. Massive banners waved in simulated wind, bearing the insignia of the Galactic Warrior Brotherhood. Beyond the crowd-lined promenade, a new ship touched down on the royal landing pad. Its hull gleamed like liquid pearl, trimmed in the deep silver of the Lionid royal crest. Roger didn't notice, but Bink's optical sensor swiveled toward it. The Moonwake flagship of Princess Vicaria, Iron Aster, third daughter of the Lionid High Council, had arrived. Fate, as usual, was already writing checks Roger had no idea he'd be forced to cash. The Moonwake descended like a shard of silver moonlight, its anti-grav thrusters sighing softly as the royal cruiser touched down on the private landing platform. Every rivet, every curve of the vessel gleamed with the calculated precision of Lionid craftsmanship. The ship wasn't just a mode of transport, it was a statement. Inside, in the forward stateroom, Princess Vicaria Aaron Oster leaned her chin on one gloved hand as her royal advisor droned on. "Your Highness, remember when greeting the tournament Grandmaster, you must bow precisely 15 degrees. No more, no less. The Xantarians are notoriously particular about these protocols. Any deviation could be interpreted as an insult to their honor." Vicaria's bright green eyes flicked toward her reflection in the polished surface of the cabin wall. Her long silver hair flowed like molten metal over the ceremonial pauldrons of her armor. The fitted plates embossed with the sigils of her house clung to her athletic frame, allowing full range of motion while broadcasting royal authority. Her most distinctive feature, however, was the long silver tail coiled neatly behind her. It shifted faintly with her mood, the tip twitching with each wave of boredom that swept over her. It was her 7th diplomatic appearance this month. 7 ceremonial greetings, 7 banquets, 7 carefully staged, spontaneous interactions with foreign officials. She'd been paraded through trade summits, peace accords, and endless goodwill missions that made her want to scream. As the youngest daughter of the Lionid High Council, Vicaria was the perfect symbol, dangerous enough to impress foreign leaders with her combat record, diplomatic enough to smooth over tensions, and politically insignificant enough to be sent anywhere her father didn't want to send himself. She was tired of being a symbol. "Are you even listening, Your Highness?" Her handmaiden Nyla leaned closer, a frown creasing her violet forehead. Nyla was barely older than Vicaria, but she had the patience of a battle monk and the persistence of a planetary tax collector. Vicaria offered a quick, toothy smile, those slightly pointed canines a lingering reminder of her species' predatory ancestry. Something about bowing and not causing an interplanetary incident. "Don't worry, Nyla, I'll be the perfect princess." Nyla's ears twitched in disapproval. "This tournament is particularly important for strengthening relations with the Galactic Warrior Brotherhood. Your father requested in the strongest terms that you behave as a proper representative of the Lionid people." Vicaria sighed. "Just like the last dozen assignments. Be a proper representative. Smile, nod, bow 15 degrees, return home." Her silver tail gave an impatient flick. Through the viewport, the grand arena loomed a colossal structure of gleaming alloy and energy fields, alive with banners and the electric hum of anticipation. Even from orbit, she'd been able to feel it, the pulse of combat, the roar of the crowd, the clash of skill and will. Her father had forbidden her from competing, of course. Royalty did not enter foreign tournaments without the express approval of the High Council, and the High Council never approved, because princesses were symbols, not warriors. The Moonwake systems chimed clearance granted. Vicaria rose, straightening her posture, slipping her ceremonial helmet into the crook of one arm. Her face became the serene mask-like expression demanded of her rank. Inside, something rebellious stirred. "Let's get this over with," she murmured. The boarding ramp extended, silver plates meeting the platform with perfect grace. A full delegation of Xantarian officials awaited her, resplendent in formal robes, each bowing in elaborate sequence. "Welcome to Xantar 5, Princess Vicaria." Aaron Oster announced, the lead official bowing precisely 15 degrees. "We are honored by your presence at our humble tournament." "The honor is mine," Vicaria replied, automatically matching the bow exactly. She had performed this ritual so many times she could have done it in her sleep. Nyla hovered discreetly at her side, murmuring reminders about names, titles, and upcoming ceremonial appearances. Vicaria nodded where appropriate, smiled when required. But her mind wasn't on the officials. Her gaze kept drifting past them toward the immense sprawl of the arena beyond. She could hear the faint echo of the crowd, smell the ozone from the combat fields. She wanted to be down there, not in a gilded royal box, but on the sand blades in hand, facing an opponent worthy of her skill. As the formalities dragged on, a thought began to form. Just once, she told herself. Just once, maybe she could slip away from her minders, see the tournament from somewhere other than a sterile royal balcony. Somewhere closer, somewhere she could feel the fight. By the time she smiled at another official, she had already made her decision. In the upper promenade, the crowd surged toward the arena gates. Holographic screens projected the names and records of the competitors. Vendors hawked everything from Leonid Battlefruit to Orion Vanguard ale. The air practically hummed with the raw anticipation of the opening bouts. Deep in the restricted sections, a certain human con man was slipping past security barriers under a false name, still oblivious to the fact that a royal he'd never met was about to completely derail his plans. Vicaria glanced toward the roaring arena once more. Tonight, she promised herself she would find her own way to the floor. And for the first time in weeks, her silver tail twitched with something that almost felt like excitement. The backstage corridors of the grand arena smelled like oil ozone and adrenaline. The hum of the crowd overhead was a constant pressure in the air, thousands of voices building toward the eruption of the opening ceremony. Roger Lavelle moved like he belonged there, shoulders squared, fake competitor badge glinting under the overhead lights. He perfected the walk of a professional warrior, the precise mix of confidence and disinterest that discouraged questions. At least he hoped it did. Bink floated along at his side, scanning constantly. Our odds of making it to the opening ceremony without incident have risen to 53%, the droid said. See, practically. A guarantee, Roger murmured, eyes sweeping the corridor ahead. They turned a corner, dodging a pair of Xantarian staffers carrying crates of freshly charged plasma spears. Roger's mind was already on the next phase of the con, making sure his first opponent stayed bought and the bets paid out cleanly. He wasn't watching where he was going. Vicaria Aronoster wasn't either. She had traded her ceremonial armor for a plain fighter's tunic, the better to slip unseen into the underbelly of the arena. The silver tail that marked her royal lineage was wrapped in decorative bands to disguise its usual pattern. Even so, she couldn't completely hide it. Her tail shifted behind her in restless arcs, betraying her excitement at finally being close to the fights. She turned into the dim service corridor at the same time Roger rounded the corner. The collision was instantaneous. It was less of a bump and more like the universe lining up two perfectly timed disasters. Roger staggered backward, his foot catching on the uneven plating. His balance pitched his arms windmilling. Instinct took over. He grabbed the first solid thing his hands found. It wasn't the wall. His hand closed around something smooth, warm, and alive. It shifted slightly under his grip with an almost electric hum. It was her tail. Time stopped. Vicaria froze, every nerve in her body alight. The sensation was unlike anything she'd felt in years, intimate, immediate, and sacred. Among her people, no one touched a linnet's tail except a bonded partner. It wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. A tail touch was the sealing of a bond. She felt the rush of it, ancestral echoes, the flare of ancient instinct, a tether snapping taut between her and the human now clutching her tail. Roger, for his part, had no idea what had just happened. He just knew he'd avoided falling flat on his face. "Oh, sorry about that," he said, letting go quickly. Almost took a nasty fall there. Vicaria's bright green eyes widened to their fullest. Her violet skin flushed a deeper shade as she straightened, tail curling sharply behind her. Her voice came out as a strangled whisper. "You touched my tail?" Roger blinked. Yeah. To stop myself from hitting the floor. No harm done, right? No harm." Her tone spiked into something between shock and outrage. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Roger's easy grin faltered. "Grab something soft so I wouldn't crack my head." "You've performed the sacred bonding ritual," Vicaria hissed, stepping closer. "The tail of a Leonid is our most sacred possession. It contains our essence, our spirit. To touch it is to..." She searched for the common galactic translation, hands tightening into fists. "To bind your soul to mine. By the laws of my people, we are now bonded." Roger's brow shot upward. We're what now? Her voice lowered into a formal register, each word edged with gravity. Joined. Mated. You are now my... She hesitated, searching for the human term. Spouse. Roger went pale. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Behind him, Bink's optical sensor widened to maximum aperture. I'm what Roger finally managed. Vicaria straightened to her full height, tail arched behind her in a posture of formal declaration. She hadn't planned on this, not here, not now, not with a stranger, but the laws of her people were absolute. And somewhere deep inside, a part of her that had always chafed against the path laid out for her felt a strange thrill. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, arena staff approaching. Vicaria's royal instincts snapped into place. You, she said, pointing at Roger. Come with me. Now. What? No, I think I just need to. Now. The force in her voice brooked no argument. Roger followed her through a side door, Bink gliding silently after them. They emerged into a private access hallway lined with ornate banners. Vicaria moved quickly, her posture snapping into that serene mask of royalty once more. Two Xantarian officials rounded the corner. Your Highness, one said, bowing deeply. We weren't expecting you here. And this is... His eyes narrowed at Roger's badge. The Solar Belt Phantom. Vicaria didn't hesitate. This is my bonded mate, she announced. Recognized under Lionid law. The official froze. Bonded you. His gaze flicked between her and Roger, reading the certainty in her expression. Of course, Your Highness. My apologies. We will make the necessary arrangements. The officials moved on, murmuring to each other. Roger stared at Vicaria. Arrangements. What arrangements? What did you just tell them? Vicaria turned to face him fully, her green eyes locked on his. I told them the truth. You touch my tail. The bond is real. And now human, we are bound together. Roger's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Bink. Bink's optical sensor swiveled toward him. Congratulations, the droid said dryly. Your odds of survival just dropped another 12%. Roger dragged a hand down his face. This, he muttered, is not going to end well. Vicaria's tail twitched once, whether in agreement or amusement, Roger couldn't tell. Roger had always imagined the royal box of the Grand Arena as a gilded perch for the galaxy's most privileged, silk cushions, the best view in the house, endless drinks served on floating trays. It turned out he'd been exactly right, and he'd never felt more out of place in his life. He sat rigidly on the edge of a velvet cushioned seat, trying not to notice the way half a dozen Lionid dignitaries kept darting suspicious glances his way. His fake identity badge was gone, confiscated at the security checkpoint, and replaced with something even more dangerous, the title of bonded mate to Princess Vicaria Aaron Astor. Bink hovered discreetly at his shoulder, its sensor constantly sweeping the crowd below. You are now the focal point of 17 different camera drones, the droid murmured. Maintain a neutral expression, preferably one that conveys dignity rather than imminent panic. Helpful as always, Roger muttered. Across the box, Vicaria stood speaking quietly with Nyla, her handmaiden. Even in the chaos of the day, she looked completely in control, armor-polished posture, perfect silver tail curled in the formal position of pride. If she was nervous about the scandal that had just detonated, she didn't show it, and that made one of them. A Xantarian official approached his ceremonial mask, hiding his expression. Your Highness and bonded mate, he said carefully. We will make an announcement of your presence at the opening ceremony. The royal box will be prepared for your formal introduction. Of course, Vicaria replied smoothly. My mate will be presented as tradition demands. Roger choked. Presented as in front of everyone. Vicaria's bright green eyes fixed on him with just a flicker of amusement. You are my bond. My people expect to see you at my side. Do you intend to dishonor me on the day our bond is recognized? Roger leaned closer, lowering his voice. Your people also expect me to survive the tournament without, dying in the first 5 seconds, which will be a neat trick considering I'm not actually a... You will manage, Vicaria interrupted crisply. Manage what exactly? Whatever is necessary. Roger opened his mouth to argue, but the arena's opening fanfare thundered through the air, cutting him off. Below them, the Grand Arena roared to life. A massive holographic display hovered over the central combat platform, projecting the names and images of the competitors. Chronos warriors raised their axes. Orion fighters flexed all 6 arms. Telepathic twins stood in perfect symmetry, their psychic link thrumming visibly. The crowd chanted bet kiosks, screamed updates, and energy barriers flared as the first exhibition match began. Roger forced himself to relax at least a little. No one was looking directly at him right now. Then his alias appeared on the display. Solar Belt Phantom. Roger's fabricated combat record scrolled past 112 win 0 losses, classified combat style. The crowd murmured with interest. He swallowed. This was the point of no return. After the opening matches, Vicaria guided Roger through a private passage to the competitor preparation area. The stairs followed them, guards officials, other fighters whispering behind gloved hands. The first of them to speak was a tall Xantarian tournament official, his ceremonial mask gleaming. Solar Belt Phantom, he said, consulting a data pad. Your combat records are unusual. No registered matches in any recognized system. Roger straightened, slipping back into the role he'd built. My techniques are passed down through a sacred lineage that values privacy above recognition. I fight not for glory, but for the purity of combat itself. The official's eyes narrowed. All competitors must undergo standard biometric scanning before their first match. Roger's pulse spiked. A scan would expose everything: his lack of training, his forged stats, the entire scam. My spiritual practices forbid invasive procedures, Roger said smoothly. The energetic disruption would. These are tournament rules, the official interrupted firmly. Bink floated forward, projecting an official-looking document. Perhaps this dispensation from the Brotherhood's inner council will clarify the matter. The official studied the glowing text, frown deepening. This appears to be an order, he conceded reluctantly, though it is highly irregular. The path of true warriors often is, Roger said solemnly. The official nodded once, clearly unconvinced, and stepped aside. Roger exhaled in relief. Back in the royal box, Vicaria stood beside him as the next matches played out. From their elevated position, they had a perfect view of the combat floor, blades flashing, shields, flaring warriors moving with deadly grace. Roger kept his face neutral, but inside his thoughts were racing. Every victory below meant one thing: eventually someone was going to fight him. And he was going to have to make it look good. Vicaria's tail brushed lightly against his leg, a small, subtle gesture, unseen by the cameras. He glanced at her. You're tense, she observed quietly. I'm watching trained killers, Charles, try to slice each other in half, Roger said. And I'm pretending to be one of them. What could I possibly have to be tense about? Her lips curved slightly. You will adapt. He almost laughed. You have a lot of faith in a guy you met because he accidentally grabbed your tail. Her green eyes locked on his. The bond is not an accident. Perhaps you will come to understand that. For the first time since the day began, Roger didn't have a quick answer. The crowd roared as the next match ended. A gong sounded, signaling the upcoming fights. His name appeared again on the holo display. His first opponent, a tone brute with gambling debts, was already waiting in the prep zone. Vicaria's tail twitched. It is time, mate, she said softly. Roger swallowed hard. Yeah, time. And for the first time in his life, the con felt a lot less like a game and a lot more like a very sharp knife balanced on a very thin edge. The prep room smelled faintly of sweat and ozone, with just a hint of the antiseptic gel the medics kept on hand for when someone inevitably left the combat floor bleeding. Roger tightened the wrist bracers of his custom combat suit, purely cosmetic, of course. Not a single piece of his armor could stop a blade, but it looked expensive and intimidating. Appearance was half the game, especially when you couldn't fight. Bink hovered in the corner, cycling through data on the upcoming match. Opponent Kror Dovak of Tone Prime. Strength significant. Skill below average. Loyalty conditional upon payment of agreed debt forgiveness. Roger adjusted his fake scar in the reflection of a polished panel. In other words, he goes down in round 1, provided you do not trip over your own feet, Bink replied dryly. The door hissed open. A tournament official stepped inside. Solar Belt Phantom, he said, bowing stiffly. You are called to the floor. Roger exhaled, squared his shoulders, and stepped into the blinding light of the grand arena. The roar of the crowd was deafening. Energy barriers shimmered around the combat platform. Holographic projections announced his name, his homeworld, his fabricated combat style, quantum resonance flow. His opponent Cror stood opposite him, all muscle and menace. He gave a theatrical snarl for the crowd, then leaned close as the noise swelled. "Make it look good, human," Cror muttered. "Oh, don't worry," Roger said with a grin. "Making things look good is my specialty." The gong sounded. Cror charged forward, his massive blade arcing high. Roger sidestepped, not too smoothly, but with enough awkwardness to look like calculated unpredictability. Cror's swing missed by a whisper. The crowd roared in approval, interpreting it as deliberate evasion. Cror attacked again. Roger stumbled backward, his heel catching the edge of the platform, but at the last second he pivoted and let Cror's momentum carry him past. The tone stumbled dramatically, his blade skittering out of reach. Roger lunged forward, tapping him on the chest with the flat of his blade. Cror went down as though he'd been struck by a star cruiser. The arena exploded in cheers. The mysterious Solar Belt Phantom had won his first match. Back in the royal box, Vicaria's bright green eyes tracked every movement. She had studied warriors her entire life. She knew when someone was hiding their true form. Yet this human style was baffling. It looked like no style at all. Her tail curled thoughtfully behind her. The next two matches went much the same. Opponent number 2, a three-eyed fighter from the Kalos Belt, slipped on the arena floor in the middle of a charge, giving Roger an opening to disarm him. Opponent number 3, a stocky Zentari brawler, lunged too far, stumbled, and ended up tied in his own energy net. Each fight ended in a win for Roger. Each fight ended with the crowd more intrigued by the Solar Belt Phantom's mysterious unpredictability. By the end of day 2, Roger was undefeated, and that was becoming a problem. Vicaria intercepted him in the royal quarter after his third win. "You fight like no one I've ever seen," she said, stepping into his path. Roger flashed his usual grin. "That's the idea." Her tail twitched. "Your style is chaotic, almost as if you have no plan at all, yet your opponents cannot touch you. I want to understand it." "It's called quantum unpredictability," Roger said, trying to sound mysterious. "You move in ways the opponent cannot predict. Randomness becomes your weapon." Her eyes narrowed. "Quantum unpredictability," she repeated, clearly skeptical. "Exactly. The less sense it makes, the harder it is to counter." For a long moment, she studied him. Roger felt the weight of her gaze, like she was seeing through the bravado to the man underneath. Then she said, "Show me." "Show you." "Tonight," Vicaria said simply, "after the evening matches, in my private training chamber." Roger's pulse spiked. Right. Sure. Training. Perfect. That night, the royal quarters' private gym hummed softly, lit by warm energy panels. Vicaria stood opposite him, her silver hair tied back, her silver tail flicking lazily. She wore a fitted training uniform that allowed her full range of movement. Roger swallowed. "Begin," she said. He hesitated. "You sure you want to spar with me? I mean, wouldn't want to, mess up the bond." "Begin," she repeated, stepping forward. Roger did what he always did. He improvised. He dodged more than he attacked, stumbling, pivoting, sometimes dropping low at the last second. Vicaria's strikes missed him by fractions. It should have looked ridiculous. Instead, she found herself intrigued. "You fight as if you're reacting," she observed between blows. "Not planning." "That's the point," Roger said, ducking another strike. "Total unpredictability." She paused, lowering her weapon. "And yet you are still standing. Perhaps there is merit to chaos." Roger grinned. "Told you." Her green eyes softened just slightly. "You may be more than you appear, mate." Roger wasn't sure how to respond to that. Over the next few days, their dynamic shifted. She continued to watch his matches closely. He continued to spin elaborate explanations for his style. And somewhere between the fights, the lies, and the quiet moments in the royal quarters, something began to change. The princess, who had begun as a problem for his scam, became something else. Something he didn't quite have the words for. The Orion champion's name flashed on the tournament roster in bold silver, Grax the Devastator. Roger sat in the royal box, staring at the display as though it were a death sentence carved in light. Because frankly, it was. The man was a walking mountain of muscle, standing 7 feet tall, with 6 arms, each capable of holding a weapon. His undefeated record wasn't just impressive, it was terrifying. And he had just sent word through the underground channels, no deal. Bink floated at Roger's shoulder, speaking in a voice only he could hear. "The Orion champion refuses all offers. He demands full payment of the prize purse in advance, which we do not possess. His stated intent is to pulverize the fraud in front of all Xantar 5. Roger rubbed a hand over his face. That's not ideal. Your understatement is noted, Bink replied. Our probability of survival has dropped to 22%. Before Roger could respond, a voice cut through the air like a blade. What's this about payment? He turned to find Vicaria standing just behind him, arms folded across her chest, tail curled tightly behind her in a way that usually meant someone was about to regret their life choices. Roger tried for a smile. Just tournament logistics. You know how it is. Her green eyes narrowed. Logistics that involve bribes. Bink's sensor dimmed in what looked suspiciously like guilt. Vicaria stepped closer, her voice low but sharp. Tell me the truth, Roger. Are your victories bought? Roger hesitated, and that was all the answer she needed. Her jaw tightened, her tail stiffening. You deceived me. Vicaria, wait. You let me believe you were a warrior. You let the arena believe you were a warrior. And you dishonor our bond with this charade. Her voice rose just enough to draw the attention of nearby dignitaries. Tomorrow you will face the Orion champion, and you will fight honestly. Roger's stomach dropped. Honestly, you've seen me fight. That's basically a death sentence. Then die with honor, she snapped. And she turned on her heel, leaving him standing in the royal corridor with half a dozen curious onlookers and one very quiet droid. That night in the royal quarters was silent. Vicaria didn't speak to him, didn't look at him. She trained alone, her staff blurring in deadly arcs, the sharp crack of strikes against the training dummies echoing through the suite. Roger lay awake in the adjoining chamber staring at the ceiling. He'd run hundreds of scams, lied to gangsters, swindled traders, even conned a Varan banking guild once. He'd always felt a thrill when the lies held, and nothing when they fell apart, just onto the next score. But this time was different. When Vicaria looked at him like that, like he'd betrayed her trust, something in him twisted uncomfortably. And he didn't like it. The next morning, tournament officials delivered the news formally. Solar Belt Phantom versus Grax the Devastator. Semi-final match. No substitutions. Roger tried not to look like a man walking to his own funeral. Bink floated beside him as they moved toward the prep chambers. Your current plan of winging it is statistically indistinguishable from suicide, the droid observed. Great pep talk, Roger muttered. Would you like me to compose a eulogy instead? Not helping Bink. In the royal box, Vicaria stood tall, her armor immaculate, her face a serene mask. Only the rigid stillness of her silver tail betrayed her inner turmoil. Nyla glanced at her. You truly mean to let him fight? Vicaria's gaze didn't waver. The bond is not a shelter for lies. If he cannot stand as a warrior, then he is unworthy of the bond. Nyla hesitated. And if he dies? Vicaria's tail twitched just once. Then he dies with honor. In the prep chamber, Roger paced. The distant roar of the crowd vibrated through the walls. Bink floated closer. We could attempt a last-minute escape. Probability of success, no, Roger said suddenly. Bink's sensor flickered. No, Roger stopped pacing. She's right. I've been lying my way through this from the start. If I'm going out there, I'm going to do it without the scam. No dives, no bribes. Just whatever I can manage. Bink was silent for a moment. You are aware this decision will almost certainly result in your violent demise. Roger managed a grin that felt far too thin. Yeah, but maybe not today. The gong sounded. Time to find out. The grand arena had never been louder. 20,000 spectators packed the stands, the thunder of their voices echoing off steel and energy shields. The semi-final round was always a spectacle, but this time the anticipation had an edge to it. Everyone had heard the whispers, the undefeated Solar Belt Phantom facing the Orion champion, Grax the Devastator. The mystery fighter versus the unstoppable juggernaut. And everyone was betting on blood. Roger stepped onto the combat platform. The light was blinding the air, heavy with the electric hum of the containment field. His armor felt heavier than usual, like it knew it was about to fail him. Across the arena floor, Grax stood like a force of nature, 7 feet of muscle scars and lethal precision. All 6 of his arms held a different weapon, twin plasma swords, a pair of hooked blades, and 2 brutal impact clubs. His yellow eyes gleamed with predatory delight. You die fast, fraud. Grax rumbled his voice, carrying easily over the crowd noise. Roger forced a grin he didn't feel. That's the plan. From the royal box, Vicaria watched. Her green eyes were unblinking, her silver tail still a stone. The announcer's voice boomed, "Combatants prepare, semi-final match, commencing in 3, 2, 1. The gong crashed. Grax moved like a storm. All 6 weapons came down in a blinding cascade of steel and plasma. Roger barely had time to dive sideways, the energy blades hissing inches from his armor. The crowd roared. Grax pressed forward, a relentless wall of offense. Roger scrambled backwards, sidestepping, ducking under one swing, only to trip over another. Each narrowly avoided strike was read by the audience as part of his quantum unpredictability style. "Is this your famous style, fraud?" Grax taunted, swinging a club that dented the arena floor where Roger had been a heartbeat earlier. Roger ducked another blow, sweat stinging his eyes. His lungs burned, his arms ached, but something inside him refused to stop moving. Not this time. No scams, no bribes. Just him trying to survive. Halfway through the match, Grax's attack drove him back to the edge of the platform. A hook blade caught his shoulder, slicing through armor and skin. Pain flared hot and sharp. Roger staggered, blood dripping. And then he heard Vicaria's voice, clear, strong, cutting through the chaos. "Prove him wrong," she shouted from the royal box. "Prove them all wrong." Roger's head snapped toward her. She was leaning forward, eyes blazing, tail arched. Something in him shifted. For the first time in his life, someone wasn't just telling him to survive. They were asking him to fight. Roger dodged another blow, rolling under Grax's legs. He grabbed a fallen spear from the arena floor, not to match Grax's strength, but to use the only advantage he had: speed and unpredictability. He spun, swinging the spear low, not to kill, but to trip. Grax stumbled, surprised for the first time. Roger pressed forward, his attack sloppy, but relentless, forcing the champion to backpedal. He wasn't winning, not really, but he was still standing, and that was enough to make the crowd roar in disbelief. But Grax was no amateur. The Orion recovered, countered, and in one brutal swing, knocked the spear from Roger's hands. The follow-up punch caught Roger square in the jaw. The world went white, then black. He woke up to the antiseptic tang of the medical bay. His jaw throbbed. His body felt like it had been run over by a star freighter. And Vicaria was standing at his bedside. "You lasted 3 seconds, she said flatly. Roger winced, felt like longer. Her tale was still, her expression unreadable. "You're not a warrior. You lied, but you fought. Not well, not skillfully, but you didn't run." Roger met her gaze. Didn't have anywhere to run to. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Then she straightened, stepping back. "Rest, mate," she said. "The fight isn't over yet." The antiseptic haze of the medical bay still lingered when the doors hissed open. 6 Xantarian tournament security officers swept inside in full armor, weapons drawn. 2 officials in ceremonial masks followed, their voices cold and precise. "Roger Lovell, alias Solar Belt Phantom, you are under arrest for fraud, bribery, and bringing dishonor to the Galactic Warrior Brotherhood," the lead official intoned. "You will be detained pending trial. Sentence options include, but are not limited to, 20 years in the Xantarian prison mines." Roger froze. The mines, the same mines everyone joked about because nobody came back from them. Before he could say a word, Vicaria stepped forward, silver tail curling in a dangerous arc. "This man," she said, voice like forged steel, "is my bonded mate. By treaty law, section 47.3, any mate of the Lionid royal house is subject to Lionid jurisdiction." The lead official hesitated. "With respect, Your Highness, the treaty does not apply to fraudulent." Her green eyes snapped toward him. "Are you questioning the validity of my bond?" The room chilled instantly. The officials knew the truth. A royal bond once declared could not be dismissed without causing a diplomatic incident. The lead security officer shifted uncomfortably. "This isn't over." "It is over for today," Vicaria said coldly. "Now leave, or explain to my father why you refused a lawful claim under royal treaty." The officers withdrew, muttering. Roger stared at her. "You protected me." She turned sharply. "Don't read into it. I will not have my house shamed by a public execution." "Sure," Roger said, smiling faintly. "Purely political." Her tail flicked in a way he was starting to recognize as annoyed, but not entirely honest. Minutes later, the Moonwake's hangar bay was a flurry of controlled chaos. Vicaria strode ahead, issuing commands, and clipped Lionid to the crew. "They'll have eyes on this ship," Bink warned. "Departure without clearance will trigger pursuit." "We're not asking for clearance," Vicaria replied. "We're leaving." Roger hesitated. "You're coming with me?" She glanced over her shoulder, eyes flashing. I don't leave my mate to Xantarian justice. And besides, her voice dropped just slightly, I'm not ready to end this bond yet. Before Roger could process that, alarms blared. They've locked the docking field, Bink reported. Security interceptors launching. Vicaria snapped an order. Override the locks. Now. Bink's optical sensor pulsed. Processing. Probability of survival during escape 26%. Probability of survival of captured 4%. Then I like our odds, Roger muttered, climbing into the pilot's seat of his freighter Star Vagrant. The docking clamps released with a heavy clunk. The freighter lurched, free thrusters roaring as Roger guided it out of the bay. Two Xantarian interceptors swung into pursuit. They're locking weapons, Bink shouted. Vicaria slid into the co-pilot's chair, fingers dancing over the defensive systems, deploying countermeasures. The freighter shook as the first volley slammed into their aft shields. Warning lights flared red. Roger gritted his teeth, throwing the ship into a sharp dive. They're faster than us. Vicaria's tail twitched as she adjusted the targeting array. Then don't fly straight. The Vagrant corkscrewed between docking towers, skimming dangerously close to the arena's outer spires. A barrage of plasma fire followed them, streaks of light painting the void. They're predicting our trajectory, Bink warned. Good, Roger said, yanking the control yoke hard to starboard. The ship rolled sharply, cutting across the interceptor's path and slipping through a narrow maintenance gap. One of the interceptors clipped a pylon and spiraled out. Vicaria's lips curved in the faintest smile, but the second interceptor was still on them, closing fast. Distance to hyperspace, window 3,000 kilometers, Bink reported. But their weapons will disable us before we reach it. Vicaria turned to Roger. Give me the controls. This is my ship, and those are my people's weapons. About to destroy it, she shot back. Another burst of plasma shook the freighter. Roger swore and shoved the controls toward her. Fine, but if we die, I'm blaming you. Her silver fingers flew over the console, entering coordinates so fast Roger couldn't follow. Calculated risk, she murmured. The essence of both combat and life. She slammed the hyperspace lever forward. Stars stretched into brilliant lines of light. The ship lurched, engines howling, then silenced the smooth hum of faster-than-light travel. Roger leaned back in his seat, heart hammering. Where exactly are we going? Vicaria's green eyes flicked toward the viewport. The Kalan Rift. There's an abandoned mining station there. The Xantarians won't follow into the quantum storms. Bink whirred uneasily. The Kalan Rift is unstable. Navigational probability of catastrophic hull failure is... Vicaria cut him off. I've flown it before. Roger stared at her. You're full of surprises, Princess. Her tail curled slightly, amusement, or maybe something else hidden in the gesture. Get used to it, mate, she said. Roger almost smiled despite himself. The Kalan Rift shimmered like a wound in space. From the cockpit of the Star Vagrant, Roger stared at the storm just beyond the reinforced viewport. Quantum lightning arced in impossible patterns, flashes of energy, appearing seconds before the thunder rippled across reality. Whole clouds of ionized gas folded in on themselves, swirling into shapes his brain refused to track. Somewhere in the middle of that chaos, an abandoned mining station clung to the edge of existence. This is suicide, Roger muttered. This is sanctuary, Vicaria corrected, hands dancing over the controls. Her voice was steady, her posture relaxed as if threading a freighter through a corridor of quantum death was just another day's work. Bink hovered behind them, its optical sensor flicking rapidly. Probability of catastrophic engine failure, 29%. Probability of Xantarian pursuit into the rift, less than 1%. Roger sighed. Great, we're safer, if the universe doesn't kill us first. Vicaria's silver tail flicked the gesture, calm but decisive. Trust me. Against his better judgment, he did. The mining station was a skeletal husk, its docking arms reaching out into the void like the ribs of some ancient space leviathan. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. Sections of the station were depressurized, others still functional, thanks to redundant systems. Over the next week, Roger and Vicaria made the place livable. They scavenged parts, repaired power relays, and cleared space in the central control room. Bink busied itself patching the life support network, occasionally muttering about how criminally inefficient human-alien collaboration tended to be. It wasn't exactly paradise, but it was hidden, and it was theirs. One evening, Roger stood by the reinforced viewport, watching the storm shift and swirl in the distance. You've been quiet, Vicaria said, stepping up beside him. Just thinking, he glanced at her, about what happens next. Her green eyes studied him. We can't stay here forever. Supplies will run out, or someone will find us. Or, he hesitated, we get tired of each other. Her silver tail swished, a faint smile tugging at her lips. I do not think that will happen, mate. Something about the way she said mate sent an odd warmth through him. The warmth didn't last. 2 days later, Bink's sensors flared. Multiple vessels approaching. Configuration 1's Antarian enforcement craft. 1 Lionid royal cruiser. Vicaria's eyes narrowed. My family. Roger's stomach dropped. How did they find us? The storms have subsided temporarily, Bink said. Our location is exposed. Vicaria straightened. No more running. It is time to face them. They waited in the central docking ring as the royal cruiser locked on. The airlock cycled open with a hiss, and a line of Lionid royal guards stepped through in perfect formation. Behind them came a tall figure armor, polished to a mirror finish. His violet skin was a shade darker than Vicaria's, his silver tail adorned with ceremonial rings. Father Vicaria set her head high. Daughter High Counselor Aaron Astor replied, his voice like carved stone. His gaze shifted to Roger, sharp as a blade. And this is the human who has caused a diplomatic incident across half the sector. Roger tried not to fidget. Pleasure to meet you, sir. The counselor's tail twitched once. You bonded to my daughter under questionable circumstances. You fought in the tournament under false pretenses. You have humiliated my house before the galaxy. Roger straightened, forcing himself to meet the man's gaze. You're not wrong, but whatever brought us together, my feelings for your daughter are real, and I intend to prove I'm worthy of her bond. The counselor's eyes narrowed, studying him in silence. Vicaria stepped closer to Roger, her voice calm but firm. The bond was formed by tradition, Father, but I choose to keep it. And I will not see my mate cast aside because he does not fit the path you mapped for me. You would defy the council, her father asked, tail curling in warning. I would choose my own path, she replied. A tense silence filled the docking ring. Royal guards shifted uneasily. Finally, the counselor exhaled, his tail relaxing slightly. Xantar demands justice for the fraud committed in their tournament. I have negotiated an alternative arrangement. Roger glanced at Vicaria. That doesn't sound ominous at all. The counselor's lips twitched. The tale of the human fraud and the Lionid princess has spread across 17 systems. The Galactic Entertainment Network, it has offered amnesty in exchange for ongoing public appearances. Roger blinked. You're saying we're celebrities now? Unfortunately, the counselor said. Vicaria's tail gave a slow, amused flick. Then the bond stands. Officially recognized, her father replied, though irregular. You will be expected to make appearances at official functions, and your mate will undergo Lionid cultural training in basic combat instruction. Your mother insists. Roger swallowed. Combat training. Vicaria smiled faintly. Don't worry, mate. I'll train you myself. Roger wasn't sure whether to be terrified or thrilled. 5 years later, Etheria Prime glittered like a jewel beneath the shifting glow of the Rainbow Nebula. Its seas shimmered in 7 colors, changing with the planet's slow rotation. Private resorts dotted the coastline's havens for the wealthiest citizens in the galaxy. On one of the most secluded terraces, Roger Lovell leaned back in a floating chair, watching the waves roll in. It still amazed him sometimes that he, the man who'd once made a living running scams on backwater stations, was here. And even more amazing, he wasn't running anymore. Vicaria stood on the sunlit terrace just beyond him, her silver hair tied back, her silver tail curling with effortless balance as she demonstrated a sequence of combat forms. Her student, a 3-year-old girl with violet skin a shade lighter than her mother's, tried to imitate the moves, her small tail swishing in determined arcs. Keep your balance centered, little star of Vicaria, said, voice warm but firm. Feel the energy flow from your core to your limbs. Like this, Mama Luna asked, trying the stance again. Perfect, Vicaria said, tail curling in pride. Roger smiled, unable to keep the warmth out of his expression. His daughter, his wife, his family. Bink hovered nearby, upgraded to a sleeker chassis but still radiating its usual dry efficiency. Combat proficiency at 23%, above average for her age group. The droid observed, recording the session. Significant improvement from last month's assessment. Roger grinned. She gets that from her mother. Vicaria arched a brow, glancing at him. And her talent for creative storytelling. Definitely me, Roger admitted. though I prefer to call it strategic communication. Vicaria laughed softly, a sound that still caught him off guard sometimes. She crossed the terrace, her tail brushing lightly against his side in the intimate gesture that had long since become second nature. 5 years, Roger said quietly, looking out at the shimmering horizon. Vicaria tilted her head, and I still can't believe this is my life, he said. I thought I'd spend the rest of my days bouncing from one scam to the next. I never thought I'd find something real. Vicaria's eyes softened, though her voice held that same quiet strength he'd always admired. You found your place. You chose to stay. Roger hesitated. I chose you. Her silver tail curled more tightly around his waist. And I chose you, mate. Inside the main hall of their ethereal retreat, a wall screen displayed the latest headlines from the Galactic Entertainment Network. Star-crossed warrior lovers return for next year's tournament promotions. Roger groaned. We're never getting out of these public appearances, are we? Vicaria's lips curved. Consider it part of your cultural training. Bink's optical sensor flickered. Public interest remains high. Net earnings from appearances have stabilized at 87% above projected averages. I recommend continuation. Roger gave the droid a flat look. Of course you do. That evening, as the Rainbow Nebula shifted from gold to violet overhead, Roger stood at the terrace railing, watching the colors ripple across the water. Vicaria joined him, silent for a moment before speaking. You remember the day you grabbed my tail? Roger smirked. Kind of hard to forget. The day my life derailed. Her green eyes glimmered. Perhaps it was the day your life aligned. Roger reached out his hand, sliding along the length of her tail in a gesture that had transformed over the years, from a cultural taboo to their most personal symbol of connection. I'm starting to think, he said, that it wasn't an accident. Vicaria's lips curved faintly. The universe has a way of placing people exactly where they need to be, even con men and princesses. Especially us, he agreed. Luna bounded over, her tail swishing happily. Papa, did you see my stance? Mama says I'm getting as good as you. That's not setting the bar very high. Bink interjected. Your father still loses 82.7% of practice matches. Roger scooped Luna up, ignoring the droid. Yeah, but I win at the important things. Vicaria's tail curled around both of them as the three of them looked out at the nebula, its colors painting the night sky. Bink hovered nearby, recording. Family unit harmony at 98%, it noted in its logs. Outcome probability, successful beyond statistical models. Conclusion. Sometimes improbability is the most logical result. Roger looked at Vicaria, then at their daughter, then back out at the stars. You know, he said, echoing words from long ago, I'm beginning to believe there are no accidents. Vicaria smiled, her green eyes reflecting the starlight. And I'm beginning to believe, she replied, that sometimes the best thing that can happen to a princess is meeting a fox instead of a prince. Luna giggled, her tail swishing. And Roger, once a fraud, now a father, realized that in a galaxy full of quantum storms, political intrigue, and impossible odds, he'd found the one place he truly belonged.